This is the universe speaking to you. You are now tuned into the Modern Spiritual Life Coaching Podcast by the certified master life coach and spiritual guide, Coach Chip. Welcome, souls. We now begin this episode of a transformational journey. Unedited, unscripted, and creating something from nothingness. Now, let there be light on Modern Spiritual Life Coaching.
It's Alchemy Coach Chip on the Modern Spiritual Podcast right here, episode number 73. This is the Saturday's Power Half Hour. We got meditations, we got great messages from great leaders out in the Himalayas, and a whole lot more. But before we get into that, we want to turn around and get into the message from the Grim Reaper. I told you yesterday on the last episode that he's been busy and he's got a lot of things going on. So right now he's going to do the coronavirus 19 update, and here it is. Hey Grim, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Chip. I'm glad that you asked and finally put me on the show. I've been quite busy collecting many souls for your Saturday's coronavirus report. The WHO, the World Health Organization, has warned the world faces danger phase of the COVID-19. They issued a sobering warning late this week about the status of the coronavirus pandemic, saying that the virus has killed more than 460,000 people worldwide, and it's still continuing. This pandemic is accelerating. More than 150,000 new cases of COVID-19 were reported on Thursday, the most in a single day so far. Arizona's at its high capacity for ICUs. They're becoming more full. Texas, the mayor is encouraging everyone to use a face mask covering when you are out in public. And I back that up at 100%. Well, this is all the time I have this afternoon. I have to be in Oklahoma, because there's souls there on that Trump rally. They're going to cause a spike. But I did want to mention one thing. I believe that this elected official, Mr. Trump, should be charged with the endangerment and persecution of Americans' health. We'll talk about this on Monday on the Morning Gratitude more. Until then, be sure to continue to wear your face mask, 6 feet distancing, and keep your counters and surfaces clean, as well as using hand sanitizer and gloves if necessary.
And thank you, Grim. We had a lot of disturbing things coming up in the last few months, and right now we are not. I mean, people think it's different from here in the United States, and in China it's different, and they're doing better and a whole bunch of stuff. Well, there's a message of a tribal leader that's out there in Ladakh, in India, Himalayas, known as Sonam Wangchuk. And he basically is an engineer, innovator, and an education reformist. He was been around for 30 years doing this, and he remains in Ladakh in India, over there in the Himalayas. And he's got a message that he wanted us to broadcast, because people will send us stuff, and we'll take the audio and the video, and we'll stick it on our video channels as well. We'll stick these on our audio channels to broadcast the message, because China is trying to go in there and take the land and the people over from the Tibetan land in the Himalayas, and he's trying to stop all of this stuff. So this message is very critical for you guys to listen to, and download this podcast as well. Subscribe to it. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook, and subscribe to us on YouTube. So let's get into this one here with Sonam Wangchuk right here on the Modern Spiritual Podcast.
Ladakh is a mountain desert across the Indian Himalayas. In the rain shadow of the mighty mountains, it's so high and dry that it's often called moonland. It looks more like a moonscape or a Marscape. Well, this one is a picture of the Mars. Often called Little Tibet, this region remains landlocked, cut off from the rest of the world for half the year. Temperatures range from -30 to +30. Hi, I'm Sonam Wangchuk, a simple indigenous tribal from this remote Ladakh. I was born in an even remoter tiny village of 5 households. But that was a long time ago. Today, my village has grown 100% to become a village of 10 households. Perhaps still a little bit smaller than your city. We had no schools in our village, so I learned from the farmers, from the rivers, trees, animals, and above all, from my mother. I picked up English and other languages from the radio and meeting people from different countries. Later went to some schools and finally finished mechanical engineering. We love our Ladakh so much that while my engineering schoolmates went to Bangalore, Mumbai and the Silicon Valley, I came back to Ladakh and started solving problems of the people. Children's problems in school education, people facing harsh cold winters, and farmers facing water shortage in the face of climate change. I've been doing these things for the last 30 years, and the world has been very generous. They have not only acknowledged but admired my work with various awards in different parts of the world. But today I have come here not to talk more about these things, but to share with you a bigger challenge that Ladakh is facing and to seek your support in solving our problem. Yes, you can solve our problem, and not only that, you have the power to even avert a world war. Let me explain how. This is Ladakh. You see the famous Indus River flowing, and over there the dark mountains. Across that are the valleys of Nubra and Changtang, where we share our border with Tibet, which is now occupied by China. You may have heard that for the past few weeks, Chinese army has intruded deep inside Indian territory. This has been happening over years, and our shepherds who raise the famous Kashmir goats have lost a lot of their pastures and are in deep trouble. Now, the Indian army is there in large numbers across those mountains, matching China's soldier to soldier, bullet to bullet. But I don't think that is a solution. Both these countries are nuclear powers, and push comes to shove, India doesn't need all of its 160 nuclear weapons to raise all Chinese cities, and vice versa. And that could soon escalate into a full-fledged world war, World War III. Therefore, I have come to seek your support in solving this. You, my friends, have the wallet power, which in this case can even diffuse a bullet war between different countries. Let me explain how. To understand your power, let's first understand what China is doing and why and when. Although China claims that Indian soldiers intruded into its territory, it could not be a coincidence that at the same time, in the months of April and May, Vietnamese decide to bother China, Taiwan and the US Navy also decide to bother China. And the timing is important. This is the time when the whole world is dealing with the pandemic. Who would even think of border disputes? But one country has serious reasons to do that, and that is China. China, being a totalitarian regime, fears not so much the bullet power of India or the US. What it fears most is its own people. The 1.4 billion people that work like bonded laborers without many rights and enrich this regime, when they are angry, there's a situation for an uprising, a revolt. And today, after the COVID pandemic, people in China are furious with their government for how they handled the pandemic. Chinese businesses are shut, factories are shut, unemployment reaches 20%. And it's time for an uprising. And that's when China picks up fights with several of its neighbors to divert the attention of angry citizens from the economy to nationalism. And this is not the first time China is doing this. From 1958 to 62, during the worst Great Chinese Famine, when people in China were very, very upset, Mao decided to invade India. And now Xi is doing the same thing again. Well, this is the simple analysis of my simple tribal mind. If this be the case, then we, the citizens of the world, should use our wallet judiciously and hit China where it hurts most, the economy. If enough people around the world decide that we will no longer buy Chinese goods and sponsor this regime, then that will see their worst nightmares coming true. And I think this is the only way we can bring the Chinese regime on the discussion table for peace dialogues. We must always clearly remember that when we say China, it's the regime and not the civilization, not the people. In fact, the Chinese people are themselves the greatest victim in this. And that's why, my friends, I've come to seek your support. We use so many Chinese products, software, hardware, from apps and software that sends millions and millions of dollars to China to products like clothing, phones, computers. If we boycott these goods, it'll send a clear message to China that the world is not happy with you. But is it right to boycott goods from a particular country? When normally not, when it is among equal partners. But my simple tribal mind says that China is not a normal country. If the world was a club of peaceful sheep, China is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It doesn't respect the rules of the game. It's a totalitarian regime run by a clique. It's not representative of its people. In fact, its people are just an instrument for its expansionist ambitions. It doesn't respect international customs or bodies like the WHO, and we saw because of its behavior how the COVID spread so much and caused so much suffering. Yet we, the people of the world, also have double standards. We overlook everything and just want trade with it. In 1947, China gobbled up Inner Mongolia. We were silent. We wanted trade. Later, Tibet, with its 6 million Tibetan Buddhists, were annexed. We were silent. We wanted trade. And then Xinjiang, with its 10 million Uyghur Muslims, were gobbled up. We were silent. We wanted trade. In fact, 60% of today's China is occupied territory. But we overlook that because we want trade. But the biggest victims of this regime are the 1.4 billion Chinese. They work like bonded laborers, have hardly any rights, and if they raise their voice, they disappear. China has already blocked and banned Twitter, Google, Facebook, and keeps its people from all the information of the free world. And now with the Belt and Roads Initiative, China is laying a debt trap around the world. Already, countries like Sri Lanka have lost their land as they couldn't pay the debts. Pakistan is soon becoming a colony of this kind. In Africa, Djibouti has already lost its land for China. Countries like Tonga have debts that amount to 44% of its GDP. After Asia and Africa, they're soon arriving in Europe, where assets are being built all over Central Asia and Europe with loans from Chinese companies and contracts given to Chinese companies with very high rates, and when you can't repay the loans, you lose your land. To my simple tribal mind, these belts and roads are the veins to suck the blood of the world, to send finished Chinese goods and to suck resources and money from around the world. But we overlook all these facts because we are addicted to cheap Chinese goods. We must also find out, why are these goods cheap in the first place? Can we ethically make cheap goods like this? Well, they are cheap because the labor is low paid, labor laws are hardly there, and natural resources are plundered like there is no tomorrow. State subsidizes utilities to artificially lower their prices, and they manipulate currencies in their favor. So it's time that we, citizens of the world, take our wallets into our hands and say we have personal economic sanctions on this regime. And yet in the free world, we have the double standards to say that if our own country has environmental and human rights restrictions, we move our factories to China. Well, aren't Chinese people human beings with human rights? Isn't nature in China a part of this planet? Now, some people would ask, is it practical? How can we manage without Chinese good? And what are the alternatives? Well, if we are determined and give enough time to businesses and industry, things will adapt themselves. So that's why I say boycott made in China, software in a week, hardware in a year. So your software apps like TikTok, Hello that you have on your mobile phones, you can immediately uninstall and uninstall in millions so that China gets a message. As for hardware like phones, computers, clothing, we take a year and slowly choose products sourced out of the free world. And my simple tribal analysis says that if you give time and clear determination, then businesses will adapt. A new ecosystem will develop where there'll be enough goods to cater to people who don't want to buy Chinese goods. Just like vegan people or Jain community, they don't eat certain things, they don't go hungry. Businesses adapt and they get what they want with time. As for replacements and alternatives to Chinese good, I really don't think that we need an alternative for everything. We have been buried under cheap Chinese goods. We have made our houses into museums cluttered with cheap things that we don't even need. Why do we need 10 pairs of shoes? Why can't we do with 3 pairs of shoes made very nicely by local craftsmen? Why do we let these goods pollute our rivers, lakes? Can we learn to live simpler? These lockdowns have actually taught us that we can be happy with much less. So can we also think out of this box and talk about a simpler life with local products? If you want to learn more about how to live happily with simpler lives, please look up our movement, ilivesimply.org. You may not agree with me, but if we keep appeasing China because of our addiction to trade with it and overlook everything else, my simple tribal mind says that we might even be repeating history. How in the late 1930s, the British government led by Chamberlain kept appeasing Hitler and giving in to its demands, finally led to the Second World War. If we continue on the same path, we might either be leading the world to a third world war or a world dominated and colonized by China. Let me help you understand further what our addiction to trade with China can land us into. Here's a story of the great Indian monkey trap. Man puts a sweet bait into the pitcher and then ties this pitcher to a tree with a very small opening. And the monkey comes, puts his hand into the pitcher, grabs the sweet. As it closes its fist to grab this bait, the opening is so small that a closed fist cannot come out of its mouth. But the monkey does not understand that all it has to do is let go of its little booty to free itself from slavery. It struggles and struggles to get its hand out, but doesn't open its fist and let go of the bait. Continues for all night, and in the morning, the shrewd hunters come and catch it, all because of its attachment to its booty. I hope we are more evolved than monkeys and can let go of such baits. Well, this is all that the last citizen from the remotest part of the planet can say. The choice is yours.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what he says. The choice is yours. I would just let you know that before I started my podcast, as I just started it, I was having all kinds of things going on at one time to give me a challenge. And I had some private investigator to come to the door looking for somebody because now they're starting to serve papers on people, eviction notices and all kinds of different notices on people. They gave people a break during the pandemic. Now, since the pandemic, they think, is over, as they're out there serving papers now. They're not having the sheriffs do it because the sheriffs don't want to be at risk for the COVID-19, so they hire third-party private investigators to come out here and do it, which, this whole entire country is messed up. And it takes one valuable and one powerful energy to override all of this stuff. And this is an energy that we all have been lacking for many, many, many decades. And Einstein knew about this. And that's when he wrote a secret letter to his daughter. And he basically told her the power of the energy of love. And many of us have missed it over the decades. Some of us were learning were growing up. We were taught differently. We weren't taught that. So this was released out here, and I finally got it. And we're going to hear this version right now, right here on the Modern Spiritual Podcast.
Albert Einstein, who we all know was a great genius, wrote some letters to his daughter Liesel back in 1938, and he said, "Please hold on to these letters because I'm not sure that humanity is ready for it." So she finally released the letters in 1980. And as I was reading this one letter that he wrote, I thought, this is exactly what we need to hear at this time. We're ready as a humanity, and going through what we're going through at this moment, these are the exact words that we need to hear. When I proposed the theory of relativity, very few understood me. And what I will reveal now to transmit to mankind will also collide with the misunderstanding and prejudice in the world. I ask you to guard the letters as long as is necessary, years, decades, until society is advanced enough to accept what I will explain below. There is an extremely powerful force that, so far, science has not found a formal explanation to. It is a force that includes and governs all others, and is even behind any phenomenon operating in the universe, and has not yet been identified by us. This universal force is love. When scientists looked for a unified theory of the universe, they forgot the most powerful unseen force. Love is light that enlightens those who give and receive it. Love is gravity because it makes some people feel attracted to others. Love is power because it multiplies the best we have and allows humanity not to be extinguished in their blind selfishness. Love unfolds and reveals. For love we live and die. Love is God, and God is love. This force explains everything and gives meaning to life. This is the variable that we have ignored for too long. Maybe because we are afraid of love, because it's the only energy in the universe that man has not learned to drive at will. To give visibility to love, I made a simple substitution in my most famous equation. If instead of E equals mc squared, we accept that the energy to heal the world can be obtained through love, multiplied by the speed of light squared, we arrive at the conclusion that love is the most powerful force there is, because it has no limits. After the failure of humanity in the use and control of the other forces of the universe that have turned against us, it is urgent that we nourish ourselves with another kind of energy. If we want our species to survive, if we are to find meaning in life, if we want to save the world and every sentient being that inhabits it, love is the one and only answer. Perhaps we are not yet ready to make a bomb of love, a device powerful enough to entirely destroy the hate, selfishness, and greed that devastates the planet. However, each individual carries within them a small but powerful generator of love, whose energy is waiting to be released. When we learn to give and receive this universal energy, dear Liesel, we will have affirmed that love conquers all, is able to transcend everything and anything, because love is the quintessence of life. I deeply regret not having been able to express what is in my heart, which has been quietly beating for you all my life. Maybe it's too late to apologize, but as time is relative, I need to tell you that I love you. And thanks to you, I have reached the ultimate answer. Your father, Albert Einstein. And I do feel we are being called by life to create this bomb of love that devastates hatred, and that it is the ultimate answer for our species to survive. And I pray that you will share this on Facebook, on YouTube with loved ones, and maybe listen to it every day. For the greatest of these is love.
The Modern Spiritual Podcast. It's Alchemy Coach Chip. This is the end of this Power Half Hour on this Saturday. We brought some powerful messages along with some of the tribal leaders in the Himalayas and with Einstein's letter as well. And you can't get any more powerful than that with the power of love. And that's what makes us so invincible with love. In the meantime, wherever you may be listening in the world, I bid you a good day and a good night. I'm going to leave you with an ocean meditation that's in Tibetan talking bowls, and that's by Life Hung, and he's done these all by his recording. And if you are a sound musician, sound healing musician, then send them over to Chip at modernspiritualpodcast.com. I get all kinds of stuff from all walks of life and all countries that they want me to rebroadcast this stuff because this message has to get out over there. Don't forget to subscribe to this RSS feed, to this podcast. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. Until Monday on the Morning Gratitude, I'll be back at 6 a.m. Mountain Time, Arizona time, and that would be Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And here's the Ocean Meditation, exclusively and only here on the Modern Spiritual Podcast.